faithfully delivering value by interpreting great books worldwide. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today we're exploring James Joyce's Ulysses from Ireland. On February 2nd, 1922, Joyce's 40th birthday, he received a gift from Paris's Shakespeare and Company, his new book, Ulysses. So this year marks its centennial publication anniversary, an immensely precious gift for Joyce at the time. Joyce spent 16 years conceiving and 7 years writing this novel, with its publication facing numerous obstacles. In 1920, serialized chapters in the Little Review magazine were accused of obscenity and banned in America. Misfortune continued when the Paris edition faced obscenity charges in the U.S., not resolved until 1933. Random House officially published it in 1944. Ulysses experienced tumultuous publication and polarized reader reactions. Some condemned it as a vicious book insulting humanity. Others saw it as insane gibberish. Readers found it chaotically complex. French writer Paul Claudel called it diabolical. But critic Valérie Larbaud praised its Rabelaisian greatness. Encyclopedic and profoundly human, Joyce's literary revolution rivals Einstein's physics and Freud's psychology. Today, Ulysses stands as a stream of consciousness classic. How did this so-called impenetrable book become canonical? How should we approach reading it? I'll interpret this book in two parts. Part 1 summarizes the plot, analyzing its epic nature and modern hero. Part 2 explores its stream of consciousness techniques and stylistic innovations with you. The labyrinthine Ulysses. Ulysses chronicles June 16, 1904 in Dublin. Young artist Stephen Dedalus and Leopold and Molly Bloom, a couple grieving their son's death. This novel about the Blooms' separated lives has 3 parts and 18 chapters, each revealing the protagonist's daily actions and thoughts. The theme of Part 1 is leaving home, covering chapters 1 to 3, depicting the young artist Stephen Dedalus at 16. This character appears in Joyce's semi-autobiographical work. This character features in the novel a portrait of the artist as a young man. As Sally mentioned before, after graduating from University College Dublin, Stephen aspired to be a unique artist. He broke away from conservative forces like family, society, and religion, and sailed to Paris, the art capital, to make his mark. Soon, his mother fell critically ill, and the destitute Stephen returned home for her funeral. Failing to fulfill his mother's dying wish for him to convert to Catholicism, he felt guilty, self-reproachful, and restless. Plus, with his father constantly drunk and family relationships cold, the depressed Stephen had to run away from home and rent a place with 2 friends. That morning, in an abandoned Martello Tower on Dublin's outskirts, medical student Mulligan kept mocking Stephen, who had just lost his mother. Like Telemachus in Homer's epic, this young poet intended to leave home to search for a father. However, unlike Odysseus's son seeking his biological father, Stephen sought a spiritual father. After breakfast, Stephen rushed to a private school. After an anxious class, Headmaster Deasy paid him and asked him to deliver a manuscript to a newspaper for publication. On his way from school to the city, passing by a beach, Stephen walked and pondered philosophy, history, religion, art, contemplating life's vicissitudes, the mysteries of creation, and the eternity of time. Facing the waves, his consciousness flowed aimlessly with various imaginations intertwining. Stephen is an idealistic young man, yearning to become a great artist and create an epic to revive the Irish nation. But in the harsh reality, his homeland suffers from dual oppression by Britain and Roman Catholicism, and family members lack genuine care and understanding. He gradually became lonely, decadent, cynical, like a stray dog, wandering around, clashing constantly with the Dublin world around him.
Late that night, drunk in a pub, Stephen barged into a brothel, shattered a chandelier, then fled to the street, shouting insults at British soldiers and priests, and was knocked down by 2 provoking British soldiers. The walls of the dead, the bridges of the Rolls.
At the critical moment, Bloom, who had been following him, immediately rescued and comforted him. At this moment, he seemed to meet his ideal father, and Bloom, in a hallucination, thought he met his deceased son. So he brought him back home, and thus, two disillusioned wanderers of Dublin finally met late at night, becoming a spiritually connected father-son pair who deeply empathize with each other. The theme of Part 2 is wandering, covering chapters 4 to 15, focusing on Bloom, the Dubliner, who became Stephen's spiritual father in Part 1. From 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., Bloom, a nearly 40-year-old adman, is the son of Jewish immigrants from Hungary, living on society's margins. His son Rudy died shortly after birth, and his 15-year-old daughter Millie works at a photo studio out of town. The hardships of life and grief over his son's death aged Bloom prematurely, even causing him to lose sexual desire in his wife's presence. The intimate bond between husband and wife is merely nominal, so deep down he always yearns for a son. From various clues, that afternoon his wife Molly will secretly meet with Boylan, the theater manager, at home. Facing this, he resorts to a method like Q's spiritual victory, mentally defeating Molly's lovers through self-comfort and avoidance. The narrator is like a camera, tracking and filming Bloom's movements throughout the day. He goes out to buy pig kidneys, prepares breakfast for his wife, eats, then quietly leaves home for errands, attends a friend's funeral, consoles the widow, places an ad at a newspaper, bathes at a bathhouse, and picks a restaurant for dinner. At a pub, using the alias Floor, he writes a love letter to Martha, a typist, wanders in a library, buys food, feeds seagulls, helps a blind stranger cross the street, and visits a maternity hospital. Late at night, he rescues the drunk and beaten Stephen, bringing him home. In Bloom, we see the image of a simple, kind, and compassionate ordinary Dubliner. At the same time, we discover his hidden physiological side. In the toilet, he quietly listens to the sound of his own bowel movement. While buying breakfast, he fantasizes about the woman in front of him and eats animal offal with relish. At a bookstall, he gets aroused by pornographic books. While walking on the beach, he sees a pretty girl named Gertie and becomes restless, imagining scenes of his wife with her lover at home. Late at night, upon returning home, Bloom, who has been cuckolded, finds traces of his rival on the bed. His emotions surge with envy and jealousy, but he lets it go, showing concern for his wife through compromise and patience, ultimately winning back her love. The theme of Part 3 is returning home, covering chapters 16 to 18, beginning with Stephen and Bloom's encounter and growing mutual understanding. And young Stephen evokes Bloom's longing for his deceased son. Their conversations reveal aligned perspectives, sparking a remarkable father-son bond that fills voids in each other's lives. The novel's 18th chapter concludes with 8 unpunctuated paragraphs showcasing Molly's stream of consciousness while half awake in bed, marking literature's most radical innovation. Molly is a moderately famous soprano singer. In her youth, beautiful and passionate with many suitors, she uniquely fell for and married the understanding Bloom. But their son's death and life struggles created marital distance over a decade, leading Molly to develop interest in other men, culminating in her afternoon affair with Boylan at home. At 2 a.m., lying in bed, Molly recalls her youthful lovers and reflects deeply on Boylan. This man was vulgar in manner and rough in behavior. This instead reminded her of Bloom's virtues: loyal, considerate, refined, frugal, sober, sincere, and tolerant. When Bloom brought Stephen home, she also faintly gained maternal satisfaction. Molly, reflecting on everything, she recalls Bloom's marriage proposal, fills with life's praise, and drifts asleep amid flowing inner monologue. Ultimately, she returns emotionally and spiritually to her husband, concluding the novel. This is the story of ordinary Dubliners on June 16, 1904. Why did Joyce choose this particular day? For the writer, this held special significance as an anniversary. In April 1903, Joyce rushed from Paris to Dublin. On his deathbed, His mother demanded he confess and receive Holy Communion. Joyce refused her request. Like Stephen in Ulysses, Joyce left home, living in loneliness, uncertainty, and disorientation. In early June 1904, Joyce met Nora, a hotel waitress. This simple girl from Galway in Western Ireland had beautiful auburn hair and vibrant energy. Joyce fell for Nora at first sight and pursued her through letters. They had their first date on June 16th. That same October, without telling their families, the brave Nora eloped with penniless Joyce, becoming his lifelong companion in exile abroad. Thus, Ulysses sets its narrative on their first date anniversary, a profound choice commemorating Joyce's historic moment of winning love and reaching maturity. Nora lacked higher education, had limited cultural knowledge, and used simple, coarse language. But in Joyce's heart, she embodied the vitality of the Irish land and maternal spirit like no other. In Molly's character, we clearly see Nora's prototype. Ulysses' unpunctuated stream of consciousness finale is said to be inspired by Nora's own writing style, which lacked punctuation. Joyce drew inspiration from her fragmented, leaping feminine writing. Joyce said only through Nora could he grasp life and love's secrets, becoming Ireland's national poet. Readers might ask, Ulysses just follows three ordinary Dubliners' daily routines without grand events, so why is it hailed as the 20th century's greatest English novel? What did he? Simply put, through narrative and stylistic innovation, Joyce explores modern consciousness, abysses, and human complexity. IGA. Regarding the title, Ulysses is the Latin name for Odysseus. Joyce once told a friend, "Now at life's midpoint, I find Ulysses' theme the most profoundly human in world literature." This theme refers to the wanderings and homecoming in Homer's Odyssey. Joyce pays homage to Homer by creating a spiritual epic of modern humanity. Let's briefly outline the Odyssey's plot. The epic depicts Odysseus, king of Ithaca, Ulysses, who leaves home when summoned by Greek forces, bidding farewell to wife and son to join the Trojan War overseas. Resourcefully, he devised the Trojan horse strategy, ending the decade-long war, leading Greece to victory. Afterwards, Odysseus drifted at sea for another 10 years, enduring countless hardships before returning home. During these 20 years, Odysseus's son Telemachus grew up. Heeding goddess Athena's advice, he journeyed to find his father, whose fate was unknown. Penelope, Odysseus's wife, also rejected the harassment of a group of suitors, faithfully waiting for her husband to return home. Eventually, Odysseus returned with his son, devised a plan to kill those ill-intentioned suitors, and the family reunited happily. This is a touching story of a son searching for his father, and a steadfast wife waiting for her brave husband to come home. For thousands of years, it has been passed down and become an immortal classic in Western literature. You see, besides the title Ulysses directly borrowing the name from Odyssey, this novel also closely imitates the Odyssey in many ways. For example, structurally, the novel's three parts unfold according to the Odyssey's three main sections: leaving home, wandering, and returning home. In terms of characters, the young artist Stephen corresponds to Odysseus's son Telemachus, and Bloom corresponds to the Greek hero Odysseus. Bloom's unfaithful wife Molly corresponds to Odysseus's loyal wife Penelope. Thematically, Stephen in Ulysses regards Bloom, who has no blood relation, as his spiritual father, corresponding to the Odyssey story of a son seeking his biological father. Additionally, many scenes, characters, imagery, and words in Ulysses have corresponding relationships with the Odyssey. In summary, through imitation and rewriting of the Odyssey, Joyce tries to build connections and allegories between modern secular life and ancient mythological traditions, and between reality and fiction. To understand Ulysses, readers must use the Odyssey as a pretext for comparison to grasp its symbolic meanings. In the translation of Ulysses by Shalkian and Wenjiro, there's an appendix after the main text that lists parallel plot patterns between Ulysses and the Odyssey according to the 18 chapters. For instance, in the Odyssey,
Telemachus accepts the advice of the goddess Athena to leave home and search for his father, corresponding to part 1 of Ulysses.
Stephen leaves home after his mother's death, hoping to find a spiritual father who understands him. For example, Bloom uses the alias Flower to write a love letter to Martha. Flower, in English, means flower, corresponding to the lotus flower in the Odyssey. Bloom temporarily escapes his anxiety by relying on this withered love flower. That afternoon, the painful fact of his wife's imminent affair temporarily eased his inner anxiety. From this perspective, Joyce compares the Dublin where the protagonist Bloom lives to the ancient Greek era 2,000 years ago. Odysseus's 10-year sea voyage is condensed into 18 hours in Dublin. The once mighty and fearless hero, Odysseus now transforms into an ordinary, busy Dubliner, a citizen. Compared to ancient heroes, Bloom becomes an anti-hero figure in modern secular society.
Yet, unlike Odysseus, who conquered through violence, Bloom exhibits modern heroic qualities, arranging funerals for friends and caring for widows.
He sympathizes with unfortunate Mrs. Breen, tenderly feeds pigeons, generously helps friends, guides blind youths across streets, finding joy in aiding others.
He visits neighbors in difficult childbirth at the hospital. Facing anti-Semitic slurs, he uncompromisingly defends Jewish dignity with clever retorts. Showing deep concern for Stephen oppressed by British soldiers, he brings him home to rest. Bloom opposes ethnic hatred and violent retaliation, advocating peace, understanding, and forgiveness to resolve conflicts and heal family wounds. Thus, Bloom attracts the homeless artist Stephen and ultimately wins back his unfaithful wife's love. If Odysseus is an ancient hero of action, Bloom is a modern spiritual hero. Interestingly, Bloom combines kindness and loyalty with shameful, chaotic thoughts, wild fantasies, and even perverse urges. Joyce aimed to create a flesh-and-blood modern Odysseus, a fully dimensional common man. As Shao Qian noted, never before had fiction created someone like Bloom, portrayed so profoundly. Unlike the flat characters of shadow plays, we not only see his features and limbs, but feel his breath and pulse. Joyce reveals not just modern social existence, but our hidden inner realities. By juxtaposing epic heroes with ordinary people, the writer achieves timeless symbolic resonance. Homeric sea adventures become modern wanderings through streets. The battle-hardened Odysseus transforms into the understanding Bloom. The compromising Bloom assists in resolving conflicts, while the resolute Telemachus becomes a sentimental poet Stephen. The steadfast Penelope transforms into the fickle Molly. When Bloom's one-day Dublin wandering parallels Odysseus's decade-long epic journey, this ordinary modern Jew evolves into a timeless symbol, an enduring, life-loving wanderer and seeker. By depicting Dubliners' life traumas and spiritual quests, Joyce imbues his characters with eternal human desires for understanding and reunion. In Boston now, as the writer said, so it is today, so it was yesterday, and so it has always been through the ages. Those eternal emotions, those universal human truths manifested across time, remain undying, whether in heroic eras or scientific ages. Yet, while ancient heroes overcame adversity through courage and force, what do modern heroes rely on in our faith-diminished society? The author follows the three protagonists sequentially revealing their quests. During his European exile, Joyce lived long in Trieste, a port city between Austria and Italy, becoming deeply familiar with Italian literature. Dante's Divine Comedy, divided into Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso, forms three realms of transcendence. Indeed, Ulysses mirrors the comedy's tripartite structure, replacing medieval sacred tales with modern urban stories, and Dante's vertical cosmos with Dublin's horizontal space. In this sense, Stephen corresponds to Dante lost midlife. Bloom replaces Virgil as father guide, while Molly mirrors Beatrice, not as pure angel guiding ascension, but as earthbound vitality, full of natural desire. The three protagonists also embody humanity's knowing, feeling, and desiring, and three ways of observing the world. Young artist Stephen contemplates metaphysical abstractions, life, death, art, aesthetics, history, representing the exploration of knowledge. Fatherly Bloom, an everyman rich in life experience, emotionally nuanced and empathetic, represents the exploration of feeling. Feminine Molly, brimming with vitality and sensuality, fully experiencing life, represents the exploration of desire. Knowing, feeling, and desiring are just facets of humanity. Only when the son representing artistic aesthetics meets the father embodying real-world experience and husband and wife mutually accept each other, can these three alienated protagonists rebuild intimacy, suddenly grasp love's true meaning, and achieve family reunion and comedy through inclusion. In fact, Ulysses' three parts correspond to Christianity's Holy Trinity: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Ironically, Joyce makes the Holy Spirit absent, replacing the Virgin Mary with Molly, an unfaithful woman. She joins the Father and Son to symbolically form a sacred community centered on family. In this sense, the novel explores how to mend broken families and rebuild human connections in our increasingly secular modern world. Ulysses offers love as the answer. Joyce said this book isn't just a day's tale, but an epic involving two nations, Israel and Ireland. Why identify Bloom as a Jewish immigrant, writing an epic for both Israel and Ireland? Joyce scholar Neil Davidson notes that from youth, Joyce understood Jewish suffering and imagined their cultural spirit, fueling his creative drive for Ulysses. Joyce saw parallels. Irish and Jews share strong family values and exist as isolated, oppressed minorities. Bloom's day-long Dublin wanderings symbolize Israel and Ireland's colonial oppression and resistance. Bloom initially followed Judaism, converted to Protestantism, then Catholicism, endorsed Darwinism while fascinated by Greek paganism and Eastern Buddhism. This ambiguous consequence brought significant challenges and dangers. Rejected by both Jews and Irish, this marginalized man found escape through romanticizing the exotic East. Chapter 5 describes Bloom passing an Oriental tea company, triggering utopian fantasies of the East. Bloom's inner monologue: the Far East must be a lovely place, not just a paradise of the world. Lazy broadleaves, you could almost sit on them and float around, with cacti, flowers, blooming grasslands. And those called snake men, could it really be like that? Sinhalese people lounging in the sun, doing nothing, a beautiful insomnia, the flower of laziness. Bloom associates the Far East with flowers, imagining India as a paradise of the world. He also yearns for the spiritual state of nirvana and is very interested in Buddhism. In chapter 4 of the novel, Molly asks Bloom about the meaning of the word reincarnation. Bloom explains that reincarnation is the rebirth of the soul. This Eastern way of thinking not only guides the protagonist's stream of consciousness, but also presents the cycle of leaving home and returning, loneliness and reunion. Bloom particularly loves Japanese crafts and plans to buy a 3-panel Japanese screen for his wife, a Japanese kimono. Chapter 17 of Ulysses mentions that Bloom has a book in his home with its cover wrapped in brown paper. The title, written in red ink, is A Journey to China. This imagined China of unknown origin becomes one of the effective strategies for the protagonist to alleviate pain and anxiety during his wanderings in Dublin. In Molly's eyes, Bloom sleeping actually looks a bit like Buddha. Joyce associates Bloom with heroes like Odysseus, Jesus, Buddha, and deities from different religions. At the same time, Bloom harbors doubts about many orthodox doctrines, like religion, nation, and social ethics. Stephen also rejected the Catholic faith represented by his mother and voluntarily exiled himself to foreign lands. This is undoubtedly a spiritual meeting point for both, as they try to search everywhere in a modern society where traditional values are disintegrating. A religion of love that can dissolve all alienation, violence, and hatred. In the novel, Stephen, who lost his mother and lacks love, has a home he doesn't return to. He is an artistic loner with a failing job and a son who died young. Bloom, whose wife had an affair, is a disappointment in life. Molly, whose marital life has cracks, is emotionally deprived. All three have their own flaws and inner pains, needing to rediscover the meaning of love. As Stephen wanders on the beach, he asks himself, "What's that word everyone knows? I am completely lonely and sorrowful here." At 2 in the afternoon, Stephen arrives at the National Library to deliver a speech. The answer he found was, "Do you know what you're talking about?" Ah, yes, the word everyone knows. But it wasn't until Stephen met Bloom late at night, who helped and cared for him, that he truly understood the essence of love through real experience. In this ordinary person, he touched the beating heart of Dublin, felt the complex emotions of the Bloom family, and learned to find artistic inspiration from daily life, forging a new conscience for the Irish nation. This is narrated in chapter 12 of the novel.
At 5 in the afternoon, the crowd gathers at Kiernan's pub. Faced with thugs attacking Jews, Citizen Bloom can't take it anymore and retorts fiercely. The savior is also a Jew. Your God is the same as mine, also a Jew.
Bloom even speaks like a prophet, telling the crowd the history of violence and hatred. All of this for men and women, insult and hatred are not life. Everyone knows what true life is, but when asked how to resolve hatred, Bloom replies, "It's love." This is the same answer Stephen found through Stephen, Bloom, and healing. On June 16, 1904, from separation to reunion, from loneliness to acceptance in their wandering and homecoming journey, Ulysses reveals the intrinsic connection between pain and love, art and reality. Love and reunion become a remedy for modern alienation and estrangement. As Joyce said, no matter how brief or constrained human affection is, it is still our shortcut to paradise. Although love has lost its charm now, it's not worthless. Everyone knows that word has been clearly proven. The writer tries to tell us that even in a modern secular world full of noise and turmoil, disintegrating, it is filled with some incredible miracle of love. All right, that's the end of the interpretation for the first part of Joyce's Ulysses. Listening notes are below the audio. Next part, we will focus on the novel's stream of consciousness techniques, stylistic innovations, and how readers can approach it. See you next time.